tactical vehicles for film and games. Once I have a profile and a package architecture, that's an arrangement of all the major components, I take that and import it into a 3D application. From here, I start blocking out rough geometry and getting a feel for how this thing looks as I move around it in 3D space.
A container,
right,
and it could just plug in, and so then you could just interchange it.
Okay.
But I would think that, you know, because they're meant to be sort of lighter and faster, they couldn't necessarily have the bigger containers, just have a smaller
just
container.
The smallest one. Okay.
I feel like the panels. And the only thing is, generally that sort of works better, I think, for the bigger capital ships where you sort of have the panels, just because I kind of like the color and the line detail there. So it's sort of.
I've gone in, fleshed out the cockpit, the interior, and the EVA chamber. Allows pilots to get in and out on the underside of it. The other major changes are the addition of thrusters, which are absolutely, mandatory. As well, I've added a large air brake to the rear of it when it's in an atmosphere of a planet.
Great, so those are some significant final changes. And then
Mercenary gunship as a viable, minimalistic, compact and very cost-efficient ship. As a style guide, I used the already existing ships in the Star Citizen universe. The floor of the cargo space has several purposes. It functions as a landing gear, but can also be extended for a quick cargo switch. The thick main hull gives great armor for the crew and the ship systems. The main challenge for me was to create the design only in 3D, without a 2D concept in that short time.
For the gunship, I decided to create a heavy hull design to assure that the ship will be able to resist enemy gunfire. In front of the ship and at the rear end there's one manned turret seat. When the gunship is approached for landing, the wings will rotate 90 degrees. During the landing phase, 4 small thrusters are based nearby the cockpit for more stabilization. On both sides are doors, 2 for cargo transport and 2 for the crew members.
One-bit amoeba, and I show you my concept for the mercenary gunship. First thing I did was to think about where to place the turrets on the ship, and I decided to put 2 on the top and 1 on the bottom in the front. This way we have a very good coverage and nearly no dead spots around the ship. And in addition to that, we have some areas which are covered by 2 or by all 3 turrets. The green area here is roughly where 2 turrets cover, and the red one is where all 3 turrets can shoot at the target. Really got the shape which I really like, and that's this version. The interior, I made a rough layout with the main areas. For example, the crew area and the cargo hold. And here you can see the ship again from the side view, top view and the front. And this is the image how it would look like while landing. And another one while in space. Thanks for watching. One-bit amoeba here, and I will show you an update on my gunship. The previous version had a very simple missile launcher, which was just a pod. I exchanged it with this kind of revolver mechanism launcher. Biggest challenge were the thrusters. They didn't look well and didn't work well either, so I restarted from the scratch and decided to go with this one. Here are some quick animations for all necessary flight maneuvers to make sure that the thrusters have enough space to rotate correctly. All thrusters work bidirectional, so it's not necessary to turn around 180 degrees to give thrust in the opposite direction. My first paint over ever, and a new name and manufacturer for the ship. I hope you enjoyed it. I for sure had a lot of fun to create it. Hey, One Bit Amoeba here, and I want to give you an update on my gunship. I decided to focus on the parts which I'm not familiar with and which might be a problem, like the hull, including the tile texturing and the interior. Let me show you first some components I was working on. So this one here is the docking device. This is from how it looks like from the inside, and this is from the bottom of the ship. So once the ship docks to the component, this collar comes out, and then opening up some small hatches here for some kind of laser devices which slice through the ship's hull and then making a breach. And from the inside component I just created a dummy before and now finalized is the ladder in the front. When it's retracted, it will be part of the floor inside the ship, and then extracting it's the ladder for the entrance for the pilot and the crew. I completely reworked the model for the Class 4 turret, so this is a final version now. Interior actually was one of the major challenges for me. I'm not familiar how to do this, so I spent lots of time to think about this. My idea now is to have kind of a modular system. You can say maybe it's like a puzzle to create certain components like these tiles on the floor. This is actually just an example for how it should look like later. And then, so the biggest challenge for me now was how to create the ship's hull and the tiling textures and the model for the hull and how this all works together. So I had a lot of work to do to figure out how this works. But I'm really happy with the result already, even though this is still kind of a prototype and is not finalized. I really hope it was a good idea to focus on these problematic areas first, even though I had to sacrifice lots of progress because I couldn't spend that much time in the modeling. Thank you very much for watching.
For us, the mercenary gunship is a ship that covers different roles. It is at the forefront to give infantry support. It must be robust but also livable, with adequate firepower. This ship generally has low maneuverability, but at the military level we follow the general linear attacks. Let's say that our ship is a part of the tier phase. We are there to bombard the enemy infantry to cover the allied infantry with landing. Following that, we created the interior to highlight the multifunctionality of this ship. The main challenge was to create a ship that does not give the idea of speed but of straight.
He explored a lot of different things as far as like the interior and a lot of details. So he had a lot of concept that was I think very helpful. I think the front part of the cockpit was kind of a little bit
Working with each other. It felt a little
Hello from Tradingo! We decided for the first week of a modeling phase to focus on the study. Before beginning work on the financial product, we thought it was better to focus on the factor that we consider fundamental, study of dynamics. Knowing Star Citizen user physics was essential that everything was balanced. I built a draft of the ship that represents the weight distributed in space. I have indicated in red the TR3 and in blue the TR2. Using the field of Maya with a high attenuation value, we can simulate the thruster. We immediately noticed that with 4 thrusters located on the back of the spaceship, weight were not balanced. We decided to create a configuration more brutal. Putting the engines on the wings, we have noticed that dynamics tests haven't been taken in the right way.
The other study that we conducted regards the size, related to the scales of Star Citizen. Another important study is the gameplay. The ship must be livable and give a feeling of involvement, versatile and obviously playable. We decided the default size for the human it had to be 2 meters. Obviously, the ship will be bigger, but will have no limits about the gameplay. For now, it is all very spacious and high. Areas left empty specially for adding details like tubes, circuits and other.
Now I show the central part of the ship. The hangar will have a retractable PC that will control a mechanical arm for unloading and loading goods. The central area, the one with the hologram, will give the opportunity for passengers to have a map and mission briefing and other convenience. The escape pods will be 12. The outer sides of the ship will explode, allowing them to get out. We will have a very elegant apartment module, a changing room related to the airlock room, and the rear manned turret will be under the ship, and the last room is the infirmary.
Page. I think my one comment I would have on the turrets themselves is that I think I would go with a slightly different style of the turret because currently...
Hi, this is Ben with Team Belafonte. Right, so this is the concepting portion of the contest that I've been working on. So the process so far, I generated a lot of thumbnails to try to nail down a basic silhouette. I then chose some of the elements that I liked from those different silhouettes and combined them into one design. From that, I kind of did a small paint over, and then that kind of bled into my main concept, which was this. I'm not going to go into a lot of the details of it. I did make some notes on some of the things that kind of stood out about this particular design. But also I made a secondary design, or a variation of this one, that had some other things that were slightly different with it as well. So, and those have a little bit of explanations in that too. I had a lot of fun doing the concept work. I'm looking forward to the next portion of the contest and getting some feedback on what I've done so far.
Hello Star Citizen community. Our design process involves the members of Team Catapult getting together, just sitting down, throwing down ideas on a sketch pad, talking about various features we wanted. We wanted the mission profile to basically be able to involve things such as land marines on a planet's surface and basically function like an armored truck in space. As those discussions came to a head, we decided we wanted to go with something that was aerodynamically sleek and avoided the sci-fi pitfall that most quote-unquote dropships use, and that is the flying brick. We came up with the idea of retractable wings that could help with the aerodynamic control going into the atmosphere and then also be pulled in during combat to provide a lower profile of the target. Now I present to you Anvil Aerospace's Albatross, the mercenary gunship from Team Catapult. Then what we did is we printed off some renders that we could then sketch upon on paper. We could then, share our ideas again. As we go forward, we'll be adding more and more details to the overall design. As you can see with this image here, we're in our closed mode, and this will be for interstellar travel, providing a smaller target and keeping sensitive parts of the wings unavailable. And this is again the top-down view of it opened up. So you can see that when they're coming into an atmosphere, the pilot would pull up, deploy the wings, and that would provide a huge braking surface. For the engines, we wanted to go with something similar to how the F-35 Lockheed Martin works, where the engine can turn 90 degrees, and in our case we'd rotate the engine so you could get some more range so they can act as thrusters. And this is its landed view. As you can see here, we've got the cockpit access as well as the missile racks deployed. This is an interior cross-section of our ship. We wanted to go with a two-level sort of split design. It would be very compressed and compact. This is Scott Cook from Team Catapult signing off, saying see you in the verse.
Greetings, citizens. Fuzzy Modem here. Past the first gauntlet and onto the concept art phase of the next great starship competition. For this design, I'm imagining that it's a used ship. You're buying it from these three mercenaries. There's the captain. He's an alcoholic vet who has a grudge against pirates. There's the crazy guy who couldn't get into the military because he couldn't get past the psych evaluation. And then there's the technician who got kicked out of the military for hacking into his drill instructor's file and changing his gender. So these guys have been living and working and sleeping and sweating and eating on this ship for years. When something broke, they patched over it or jury-rigged a workaround, and now they're looking to get a bigger ship and add some more crew, and you can get this ship at a good price if you accept that it's kind of a fixer-upper and you're buying it as is. For the design itself, I took inspiration from a sword and shield. It's an asymmetrical design with a big plate of armor and two turrets on one side. Because it's an asymmetrical design, I'm working on visual balance as well as center of mass. I'm also trying to position thrusters for improved roll speed as well as VTOL capability while in atmosphere, so it would fly more like a helicopter than a jet. Greetings, citizens. Fuzzy Modem here. Last time the judges liked my backstory and the idea of a sword and shield, but they weren't sold on my executioner presentation. Because the judges weren't really taken with my design, I've come up with three different versions for them to choose from. The first is by Robert Space Industries. I've smoothed it over and I've removed the rivets, but moving forward I'd make it look more like the Aurora and the Constellation. The second is by Consolidated Outland, inspired by the work we've seen thus far on the Mustang. It's the most asymmetrical of the three options, and instead of traditional turrets, the weapons are built into the shield. The third design is by Kruger Intergalactic. It abandons the asymmetry in favor of a second shield on the other side. I can move forward in one of these directions, or I can mix and match parts between them. I look forward to the next round of critique. Greetings, citizens. Fuzzy Modem here, Team Cryo, with an update on the modeling portion of the next great starship competition. I've been studying the Aurora and the Constellation for design cues while trying to retain my own sense of identity. A real-life modern aircraft that came up a lot when discussing this project on the forums was the AC-130, which has this giant cannon off to one side. I've moved the pilot's turret to the same side as the shield, so all weapons can be brought to bear simultaneously on the target. There's a lot of work yet to do. I've just started on the interior, and obviously all of the textures are yet to come. But I hope you like my progress thus far, and thanks for watching the next great starship.
Let me open it up.
What we usually do first is to do several sketches to visualize the subject and have something to start with. Our main inspiration for the ship was basically the name itself. Mercenary and gunship are two explosive words. Mixed together, you can get an excellent idea on what the ship does and how it looks. The hardest part was to place every specification in place without missing or misinterpreting anything. Once we had a better version, we made a basic low-res model to work on the shape and details, doing paintovers and sketches. The ship has 8 thrusters, each with its own movement, making it perfect for space and atmosphere. The thrusters are strong enough to lift the ship vertically and make fast deployment landings. The mercenary gunship is a big bulky piece of metal and packs quite a punch, having 2 main turrets on top and 1 in the bottom that gives the ship excellent offensive and defensive capabilities, plus a pilot-controlled turret, 2 missile pods and 2 extra hardpoints on the front sides, making it an excellent multi-purpose combat ship. That was our mercenary gunship. I hope you like it, and I see you next time.
Hey everyone, this is Team 4 Horsemen. We ended up with 10 thumbnails and then we started cutting them up into pieces in Photoshop and basically sticking parts from one image into another with a basic shape for a ship in hand. Tobias started refining the Frankenstein of thumbnails into a more readable format with, reworking the shapes, adding details, balancing out the shapes, all that stuff. After that, we made a very rough block out to see if the shapes that we had in 2D, if they also work in 3D. For the interior, we wanted to have a bit more of a lived-in feel, because the crew lives there from day to day. It's their house, it's their home. So we wanted to have a small living area available to crew when they're not engaged in combat. Have a bench or two and a table for mission briefings or just occasional poker playing between the crew or whatever. We also embedded a cargo crane in the back of the ship into the tail for... Here's the more refined concept that is based on the blockout, so they actually match, which illustrates how we want to move forward with our ship design. I figured we'd make an update on how we believe the thrusters will work on our gunship, the Redeemer. The front maneuvering thrusters are here, on top and right below the cockpit. The main thrusters are embedded in the big wing nacelles. Here's pitch. Bottom thrusters fire at the back and the front, angling the ship up. And reverse, obviously, angling the ship back down. Here's how the ship yaws. It fires the thrusters on one side and uses the maneuvering thrusters in the front to steer effectively. This is also the part that we're not entirely sure about if it'll work in engine, because this whole system depends on tank steering. And we're not entirely sure if that's 100% doable within Star Citizen. That's why we've also come up with 2 small alternatives to make yaw more feasible. Here's option 1. We add a retro thruster on one side. And here's option 2, where we rotate the whole engine body to provide a more sideways thrust. And to finish up, here's VTOL. So this is the image that we showed last, and this is the concept which we base most of our exterior work on. We've added a new cockpit, which we used as a base for our new concept for the cockpit interior. We've also done a lot of work on the interior of the spaceship. So here's some concept of the engine room, the marine loading bay, including the turret access, and the recreation area for the crew of the ship over here, which also has the access to the upper turret. And now we'll show you the progress on our interior to date. So here's the marine area, including access to the belly gunner turret, moving up the stairs into the engineering area, which has the shield generators, which you can see in the sides over here, and a few terminals with some cool information displays and such. Moving up through this door into the recreation area again, with a small kitchen over here, a table, the access going into the turret. It's also equipped with a toilet and a shower. Here's the entry into the top turret. The sleeping bunks are on the right. Going back through engineering down into the marine area, where you can see the jump seats, boarding hatch, and the access ramp. Here's the cargo, updated. Here you can also see the updated exterior on the back of the ship. We've detailed our cargo crane a little bit more. We've added a special locking mechanism here. And here's another quick shot of the exterior. Alright, and that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video.
But in general, you know, like everything that I'm seeing so far, I really don't have. Right, yeah. So the one turret at the top, and then the second turret's right under the nose, basically.
Yes, and our idea for it is the access to that belly turret is in the same area where the Marines would be sitting with the boarding hatch.
Okay, cool.
Someone enters via an airlock into like the canopy of the turret. Airlock closes, and the canopy.
For size reference, we took the class 5 turrets of the Constellation to get an image of how big the ship would be. This meant we would get to a size roughly to 45 meters, thus being in between the Constellation and the Freelancer. We tried to align the two turrets so they both would be able to fire forward, and at the same time each turret being able to support a 360-degree area around the ship, as well as the lower turret protecting 195 degrees of the lower hull, and the upper turret protecting nearly 200 degrees of the upper hull. The overall look of the gunship somehow felt like a good mix of being aggressive and elegant at the same time. It also provided a better layout of the internal rooms and more space at the side of the front part of the hull to fit the Class 3 hardpoints. The Class 4 hardpoint would also have a better positioning, and it would not interfere with the visibility for the gunners for the main Class 5 turrets. Finally, we still made some variations of hull coloring, still for both variants, and added some rough concept art. This concluded our concept stage so far. Thanks for watching. Welcome to Team Infinite Shoe Monkey's Concept Progress Report. After receiving feedback from the judges, we started improving our hull design. We tried to achieve an overall bulkier look. In several steps we reduced a bit of length. We also increased the height by roughly 0.3 meters and especially made the nose more bulky. The cockpit shape was changed after trying different variants. We also tried adding some thicker armor at different spots, giving it more detail and adding some substance. And finally, we started adding some rough texture to the ship. We also went ahead and improved the turret access and deployment from the standby position. The turret position and field of view for the Class 4 hardpoint was added as well. And we also had some ideas for the Class 3 missile racks, which in our case developed into a missile revolver, holding more missiles while keeping a low profile as it wouldn't have to deploy completely. To give you an idea of how the ship would land and also how the VTOL system would work, we added this short landing sequence. Monkey reporting in. Since our stage 2 video, we made a lot of progress on different parts of our ship. For one thing, we took some points of the community that were of concern. Like this, we came up with a variation of the scimitar with skids. Don't worry though, for those of you who like the original landing gear, we will make 2 fully developed variations and get a more futuristic look to the wheeled landing gear. We also went ahead and took selected spots of the ship to add some detail while keeping the main hull smooth. In the front, we finally added the sensoric array and tracking and camera system. The same under both wings, allowing for an optimal stream of information to the pilot. We always had in mind that the gunners will give information to the pilot via the intercom as well. For us, this could make gameplay even more fun. Further, we improved the thrusters. They got a new look, making the thrust vectoring flap smaller, the overall thruster shorter, and adding an additional joint. Like this, for the landing approach, the thrusters would not have to fold the full way for VTOL, and leaving more ground space as some of you gave us this heads up. Of course, you probably already noticed the new texture, where we tried to get more of the Hornet look. But we will make 3 different variations and try to see which ones work best. We also tried out some lighting on the outside of the ship's hull, where it made sense to give it more atmosphere. For the interior, we basically finished the rough model and are already working on different modules for the inside detail at the same time. Here you can also see the boarding turret we came up with, to clear the enemy ship of hostiles while keeping your mercenaries safe before entering. Also, there will be a multifunctional unit in the main crew habitat that will feature the main briefing table that can also transform into a medical bay, with the necessary equipment stowed in the above compartments and integrated sensors for diagnostics. For the civilian variant, we also came up with this more luxurious cabin that will replace the escape pods module, as the civilian gunship will just feature a crew of 3. The escape cockpit vehicle will be enough. Which is the next thing we try to work out in more detail. If there's really no way of saving the ship, we include this small vehicle that can detach, and on top of that, if you're flying the military variant, can pick up the escape pods and fly off to safety. This sums up most of our improvements we've made till now. We hope you enjoyed watching, and sorry for the viewport preview quality this time, but render times exceed our current time frame. Infinite Shoe Monkey, signing off.
After gathering as much information as possible, we proceeded with basic sketching and blockouts with various shapes and engine positions. I guess the hardest part was integrating the engines in this package. After the blockout, there were various issues that had to be dealt with, such as turret placement and space which it covers. Here is the final version. I wish I could explain all the features we added in this ship, but hopefully the design can be read by itself. As you can see, all weapons sink into the hull, or maybe just fold like the chin turret. The ship itself is quite modular, as you can see in this upgraded version for ground combat. The cargo bay has been upgraded to 15 tons for troop deployment. The interior has been designed to provide basic life and all needed ship access. Here are the animations, as you can see, fully closed with a much more fluid shape for atmospheric re-entry. So that's it. This is our ship. I hope you guys like it. Bye!
First off, we'd like to thank the judges for the insightful feedback of our ship, the AX-114 Boomslang. Because of the positive response we received on our last round, we've made only minor final adjustments to the general design, while at the same time fleshing out our ship's functionality. We chose Origin Jumpworks for our ship manufacturer since our own design philosophy of function and form matched theirs. Their strict anti-piracy policy would also explain their production of a gunship tailored specifically for the needs of mercenaries and bounty hunters. The first thing we did for this phase was tighten the ship's silhouette, since we realized that the ship was still too big for the 15-ton maximum cargo capacity. We slimmed down the hull and redesigned the wings to give it a sleeker and more aggressive profile. As for the pilot's field of view, here's a rough wide-angle approximation of the view from inside the pilot's seat. The ship's canopy provides excellent visibility for both the pilot and crew members seated in jump seats on the upper deck. Here is our final design for the AX-114 Boomslang mercenary gunship by Origin Jumpworks, concepted by Icarus. We strive to make our final rendering as realistic as possible. As before, we hope that the function of the different ship parts is evident at a glance. The weapons, with the exception of the pilot-controlled Class 4 turret, can be retracted into the hull. The heavily armored AX-115R Bushmaster variant is a later version developed independently by the UEE Navy. Thank you for the opportunity to be included in this competition, and this is truly the ship we want to fly, and we hope to get that chance.
Hello, Cloud Imperium Games. This is Shard Collector's report on our progress so far. As we've shown in our last video submission, we've more or less finalized the look and feel of our ship, the AX-114 Boomslang. However, due to community feedback we received in the forums, we've decided to fix some additional problem areas before continuing on to the modeling phase. Among the most common problems identified by the community were the turret's limited ability to engage targets on its tail, the off-centered placement of our main engines, and the aesthetics of the tail and the docking port of the ship. We dealt with the first two problems by lowering the placement of the engine nacelle connections. This clears up the line of sight of the turrets aft of the ship, as well as brings the main thrusters closer to the ship's center of mass. For the tail, we redesigned it completely to better match the flow of the ship's silhouette.
Its function as a docking port and a staging area for Marines remains unchanged, except that the docking collar is now attached to a telescoping chamber that extends during docking action. For the modeling phase, we first created a very rough blockout of the rooms of the ship and imported it into CryEngine to get a better feel of the interior space of our ship. We took note of the areas that needed adjustment, which included the length of the footrest of the pilot's chair, the width and height of the doorways, and the placement of stairs in the cockpit. We also made a set of fully textured and normal mapped interior props as a test, before proceeding with the preliminary modeling of several modular parts and assembling them into a room. For the exterior, we decided to make the turrets only partially retractable at the suggestion of several members of the community. This simplifies the animations of the turrets, frees up space in the interior, and allows the turrets to mount bigger guns than the Mantis GT220. The gunners enter the turret from a small seat located directly beneath it, which then activates to lift the gunner up to the main turret body. An airlock seals the entry port behind the gunner as the turret detaches and rotates away from the main body. We also came up with the idea of giving the manned turrets the ability to become pilot-controlled remote turrets in case gunners are not available. This is easily done by simply rotating the gimbal where the gun mounts attached to the main turret body, but it remains to be seen if this is allowable regarding Class 5 turrets. We've also started detailing the engines and the landing legs, finalizing their animations. That's our progress so far. We had the misfortune of being in the last batch of the last phase, thus receiving community feedback later than some of the other teams. Having to revise the designs again at the last minute meant losing a bit more time for the modeling phase than the other teams. But with 2 modelers and texture artists on our team, we are confident that we can catch up.
So the bottom is the pilot, the 2 top are like jump seats, so the gunners that would go back in the turret or something like that?
Yeah. And then there's also the entrances to the turrets. It's not shown here, but they're just behind the seats. So.
Okay. The co-pilot's view from
That
the top
is-
level?
Yes, I believe that's the upper deck.
Okay.
So we started off with that, and then we branched off. We want to give the turrets as wide a firing arc as possible. So I tried to put them in a location on the ship where they had almost full hemispherical views from the ship position. We also thought it would be cool to have a drop pod that could detach and basically allow the ship to drop off the drop pod while slowing down. In terms of workflow, I did some ink sketches initially, then I did some drawing to Photoshop, then I passed them back and forth between my team and I, and then after that I did one of those I did a detailed paint over to try to figure out what the final shape layout is going to be, but we still had some issues with the shape and we had some design things that we weren't very happy about. So I think it wasn't until the concept model when we finally figured out what kind of engine configuration we wanted. So that was one thing. We put together our final iteration 1 of our concepts. I really enjoyed the judges' feedback from last week. I just thought I'd let you know that, and we hope to see you in the next part of the competition. Alright, so for comparison, here is the original 3/4 paint over the ship, and there are actually thrusters there, but if none of the judges saw it, maybe it wasn't obvious enough, so we updated that. Here's the reverse view of the ship with the new RCS thrusters, so you can see it's a better angle to show off how the new thrusters change the silhouette of the ship. We moved the variable thrust vanes into the middle so that the copper colored vane nozzles on the outside can do a different purpose. So we also trimmed the front of the drop pod so that the drop pod can be picked up easier, because in the older design there was really no easy way for the gunship to pick it up after it's been dropped off. You can see the turret deployment, the docking ladder and the door deployment, and the docking ramp being deployed. So you'll see that back to back in the video. And next is the intakes on the engine animating for atmospheric flight, the open and close like that, to become air breathing and non-air breathing. So next is the upper engine afterburners that you can see opening very soon, and these actually function with the lower afterburners, but the lower engines mostly just use an effect for that. So that in the animation. Next is you'll see the entire landing sequence of the ship, where the engine pivot into VTOL position, and the nozzles help that. The lower engine pivots some more, and the rear engine also pivot with the thrust reverse kicking in and the landing gear popping out. So speaking of landing gear, here's some close-up of the landing gear with some first pass positioned on the hydraulics. We're looking for, and I think that's about it. Hi, Salma from Team Pure Panda, dropping off a quick update for our gunship, the Drake Interplanetary Brutus. So here's something to be addressed for this update. We extended the tail to balance out the design when this thing comes out, so it looks kind of more like a sky crane now. So yeah, that's the thing. The drop pod isn't finished yet, obviously. So we also made the engine itself smaller. It's apparent in the 3/4 view, but also apparent in the front view. That's another thing. We also imported an older version of this model into CryEngine to check the visibility of the thing. So if you look at this is roughly where the player is going to be. Let's go into player mode. So this is roughly where the player is going to sit, the pilot, and the visibility from inside is nice and wide, like this. The upper one has slightly less visibility, but here's what it looks like. Once again, sorry about the missing pieces. So going back to Maya, as you noticed by now, I'm pretty sure, there are no textures yet. Sorry about that. We got a bit of a late start, but we'll do our best to give you an update with some shaders by next week or like a week and a half from now. So yeah, let's go into the engine. We spent the last I spent the last 1 or 2 days making this engine. So we figured that it's going to get shot at a lot because it's just hanging out there. So we decided to model it from the inside out. So let's take out the shell and take a look at the inside. Shell, 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 shell. So here's what the engine looks like on the inside. We have the 2 TR3s. There are some pieces missing over here, but that's okay for now. Yeah, here are some. You can see the engine nozzles, the variable thrust nozzles. We put a lot of love into them because we saw you guys put a lot of love into the engine nozzles. So yeah, that's there. This is the frame that holds it all together. The frame, and then the intake on the front end, the gimbal, and the afterburner units. One at the top, one at the bottom, like this. So yeah, that's I think that about concludes our in-house quote-unquote update of our gunship, and hopefully you guys like it, and hopefully we're not too far behind. So thank you and have a nice day.
Greetings once again, fellow citizens. This is Skyguard Fabrications, and I'm honored and excited to have been selected to compete in this competition. I spent a lot of time doing nothing but silhouettes. I did a lot of them. What I was doing was looking for a silhouette that resonated with me, and the challenge was to come up with an overall design that fit in with the current military ships, but that also could be identified at a glance as an independent, unique design. I'm proud to present the Guardian AX1. The core of my design centered around the idea of being able to deploy Marines into combat as quickly and as safely as possible. So you'll notice that the mercenary gunship has 2 large hatch doors on either side with built-in rappelling systems. This is to allow Marines to deploy from the ship without forcing the ship to land. Because of where the turrets are placed, the main Class 4 and one of the Class 5s are able to provide ground support to the Marines either during deployment or throughout the ground operation. It will be very, very difficult to sneak up on this ship. You have almost no location around the ship that there isn't the possibility that this mercenary gunship can shoot.
Let me introduce you to the Guardian AX2, manufactured by Aegis Dynamics. So this new design incorporates all of the core features of the original design. The overall feel of the ship has more of an Aegis Dynamic look to it. I've addressed many of the points brought up by the judges, starting with the size of the wings in comparison to the main body of the ship. I've rebalanced it so that it doesn't look like the wings are too small for the amount of weight that they're carrying. I've changed the profile of the ship so that it no longer looks like it's drooping down. It's no longer sort of a hunchback ship. One of the other big changes is the entire front end of the ship. So the cockpit area was completely redesigned. The cockpit sits pretty high on the ship at this point, and the pilot is able to see clearly around almost the entire perimeter of the ship. So you'll notice here that all of the weapons are able to hide inside of the ship, the Class 3s, the Class 4s, and the Class 5s. I've also paid a lot more attention to the thruster placement. My original design had some pretty serious technical issues with its ability to rotate in 2 different directions. It didn't quite fit properly on the ship, and so I redesigned it completely, and I incorporated the maneuvering thruster technology, where it's gimbaled at a specific point at the very base of the nozzle of the thruster, and added that to all 4 of the TR3, so each one of them can now rotate independently in place. The Guardian AX2 as manufactured by Aegis Dynamics. Greetings, fellow citizens. This is Elwin from Skyguard Fabrications, and I have an update on the modeling for the mercenary gunship, the Guardian AX2. Here's a reminder of what the gunship actually looks like, even though there have been some pretty major changes that have happened since this concept was done. So we have a turntable just showing a lot of the modeling that was done to the top of the ship. I spent a lot of time making sure that I have a really clean mesh for the top of the wings. I spent a good amount of time making sure that the TR2 thrusters are fully integrated into the hull geometry so that it's really smooth and it transitions very well. Here's an example of how the top turret is tucked into the top of the ship and completely protected with armor plating, but it does have the cockpit area of the turret open to the skies, that way you can still spot. So this hatch is actually a really good example of the level of quality that I'm shooting for the entire ship. It's got a very decent high level of polygons, and it's got a really cool deployment and retraction animation. So I'm hoping to be able to get that level of quality across all of the geometry on the ship. I still have quite a bit of work to do. So as you can tell, the Class 5 turret is pretty well hidden on top of the ship, but it still allows the user to function as a spotter without having to reveal its weapons. The turret on the bottom will function in exactly the same way. I still have a lot of geometry that I have to do for the exterior of the ship, and I have quite a bit to do for the interior of the ship. But everything is going really well, and I hope to have a more finished update coming soon. And here's a quick view of the visibility that the pilot has when he's flying the ship. Thanks. Okay, cool. So the scene's pretty messy. I have a lot of pieces all over the place. But I modeled the interior similar to what a cargo plane would be.
Okay, cool.
So you have this really large open space, which can be converted as crew quarters if you really wanted to carry around 6 Marines for a long trip. And I've got these treads on the bottom, which would be used for loading in cargo.
Okay,
very
cool.
similar to a cargo plane. But they can also retract into the ship and close up, so you don't even have to see any of that stuff. But it's really designed to be similar to the first concept that I sent you, which is one big sort of open space that's modular, and you can go ahead and throw in what
you can bring stuff in. So I think it's sort of going to be depending on the details.
My first ideas was that it was going to have to be grounded in some kind of reality because the parameters were such that the dropship had to go through the upper atmosphere and land, obviously, so I thought it's going to have to conform to some kind of aerodynamics, depending on what kind of planet it's going to be landed on. The idea that I basically came up with in the end was a vehicle that drops from the underside of a mothership and then falls in freefall mode in a kind of blind state with a front heat shield over the main visor that's covered, and then as it comes through the atmosphere, it then deploys its cannon arms. It's called the Shadowlancer ship. That was the name I eventually settled on, and the reason why is because it has like these sorts of praying mantis style arms that unfold from the side with cannons on. One of the ideas that I had just randomly was this bat unit, so instead of having the troops be dropped into a combat zone from the air, from the ground, sorry, they're actually dropped in from the air. So that means that you can potentially have like more troops. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the concept that I've came up with. Hello, Talon Corporation here. In the animation you can see the changes to the heat shielding around the front that now retracts into the main body. The engines now gimbal much more efficiently. The back engine's also gimbaling all axis, but I didn't have time to render that out, unfortunately. So in the interest of time, this animation has been cut somewhat short. You'll also see the cannons opening up from the belly and also the top, so this is much more in line with the spec. The original idea with the arms, although it's still in existence, so it's still in the ship, but now it's got the rocket pods on the underneath, and it also serves a sort of tertiary function as well. So it allows the troops to disembark under cover still, and it also protects the pod when it's not in use, and obviously the third function, which is to house the rocket pods on the sides as well at the same time. The overall design of the ship, I think, still maintains the curvilinear form of the Avenger and the kind of look of Aegis Dynamics, which I think is pretty good. And the scale of the ship has also increased quite a lot as well. So in line with the specs, again, you can see the man there in scale with the ship. It's obviously a lot bigger, and also from the interior shots as well, you can see that there's actually going to be a lift function, kind of like in the Constellation, which is obviously going to go through a series of airlocks from the opening at the bottom, and it'll ascend right the way up into the top of the ship, so into like the living quarters, and then from there you can access whatever other modules might be put into the ship, so things like reconnaissance kind of software or something like that, or a medical bay. So yeah, again, in terms of scale, you can see that there's the original reference with the Avenger next to it. You can see that the ship is much bigger now in comparison to the other iteration of the design. There's a couple more shots that show the actual function of the pod, so they would actually hook into the hull. If this was possible in CryEngine, I mean, that might have to change. It might just be that it's magnetised onto the front, onto the airlock. The idea was that basically if the hull was breached, then the ship could basically attach onto the breach in the hull, and then the troops could be forced through there, which would be pretty cool if that was possible. There's some other images as well of the front of the ship, so just to give you a better idea of the sort of dynamic shape of the front and how the weapons and things open out. And then you can see the rocket pods on the arms there as well. The arms themselves looking a lot more robust, in line with what the forums kind of mentioned, that they look too flimsy. I think that the design is definitely coming on a lot. I'm going to be obviously working with the texturing side of things soon. That'll be coming into it, but obviously primarily I thought that it was most important to get the shape of the ship down, and I think it looks pretty good now. It looks pretty menacing. I'm really looking forward to hearing the feedback about the ship from Chris Roberts as well, because that's like winning a mini competition in itself, really being able to talk to the man who's behind the game directly. That'll be really interesting, so I'm looking forward.
I can kind of, I don't know, this is kind of awkward. Well, the interior part is just in this section here, basically. You can probably see me hovering my mouse over. So this is like that back view. I don't know if you can.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah. So that's looking down into the main kind of cabin. And then if I press F over here, this is the cockpit. I'm still working on it actually. I'll just open this other scene. So yeah, that's just like the sort of beginnings of the cockpit, really. Like I'm just starting to flesh out the insides of that and stuff. There's also a chair, but that's in the other model, which you probably just saw the back of.
Hey guys, ePhalanx here with Team TryTry. This is our entry for the next great starship. So we start out with like 4 or 5 concepts. Narrowed it down. We really were thinking on this one at first. It was a heavy fighter look though, a little bit outside the gunship. Then we moved on to this one, which we thought had more of that aggressive stance, and also made some thrusters we thought we'd use. More sketching of the concept just to give us a better look from different angles. And then some thruster work, just showing you how the wings articulate with the thrusters. And that was going to be important considering the gimbal thrusters that were outlined in the concept. And we moved on to a little block out face to give us a better thought on the geometry, and moved into some internal layouts. And this shows you just how things are laid out inside of the ship with the turrets and stairs. As you can see, the design has been a little more fleshed out. This time around, the paint over has been added to, giving you more of a better look and feel of the ship overall. So here's the newly dubbed AX-14 Silverback by Drake Interplanetary. After hearing Mark's nickname, the Silverback, it just fits so well with the ship, so we went with it. Also, we went with Drake as well because Chris liked it and we were also leaning in that direction. Thanks, guys. Most of this is in 3D, this update, because we're refining the model and working on several things. These are some ortho views. You'll see we have multi-man turrets on the top and bottom, providing coverage at least 360 horizontal and 180 vertically on the top and bottom of the ship. We have two modes of flight for this. We have a cruise mode and a battle attack mode. The wings flip back, puts it in cruise mode, provides faster forward speed while sacrificing some lateral movement. We've also redesigned the thrusters a bit to balance out the frame and provide some more articulation. The wings provide atmosphere control surfaces used to help you vector in your descent in an atmosphere, helpful with landing as well. We also put some interior shots in here for you. These sort of look like what we're going to have, but may change up. We also have a pretty complex missile loading system that goes inside the ship so you can see the missiles load, and also they get taken up into the wing. So guys, thanks for watching. That's Hey, Star Citizen fans and CIG employees. Welcome. I am ePhalanx from TriTri and here to give you a quick update on the big bad Silverback. So let's get into it. Off the back, we changed the Silverback windshield to provide a little more visibility because we went from 1 seat to 3 seats. So you can have everybody sitting up there and enjoying and singing tunes together. So that's a good thing. We also fleshed out the interior a little bit more. We were kind of in the phase 2 blockout stage, so we're trying to get past that into the high detail area. We've done a few areas, which the cockpit, pilot seat, and some other areas have been fleshed out a little bit more. But we're kind of almost at the completion stage for phase 2 blockout. Here you can see some of the interior areas. We got the loo there for the bathroom and all that. You see some of the entrance ways between the OVA unit and the main hull. So here you see some of the landing gear and how that works out, and then you see the size comparison for the Freelancer. Now we got some alternate looks, more military rugged cockpits, a little more armored. Also having some fins on the back, giving it a little sleeker look. This is more of an optional type config, perhaps a little more military, like I said before. You can see some of the engines been beefed up. We have the brake flaps as well. Here we see the lift working and the tables and chairs. Also there's a sink in the back, and we have a grate at the top to protect you so you don't fall in on the top. You see the chair swiveling here and the animations on the arms that fold out to give you the control panels. There is a little clipping here. We're going to fix that on windshield. Now you see the way the missiles are loaded into the hull, also the entrance and ramp and the ladder that folds up inside. Here this will show you how the engines work and how they articulate. We have a little more work to do on the front thrusters for the side to side, but it should be simple to take care of. And you can also see the wings fold back for cruise mode. Hey guys, thanks for watching. We really appreciate all your support. Have a good
And to certain major points based on the technical description. It's supposed to shoot a lot. It's supposed to relatively loiter, allowing itself to shoot a lot. It's supposed to hold the punch or two while it's shooting. It's supposed to drop troops into the fray and then shoot a lot to support them. Based on these points, we started to work on a design. Exactly like that, function first, pure looks well. Few looks will have to wait for a bit. In a gunship, the pilot's sight and ability to acquire targets is key. However, after he has a target, what's the point if there is not enough firepower available at once to hit it? Our concept artist Karanak is known for incredibly detailed and clean concepts, but those take time. Finding the right way to combine our workflow, well, we certainly can puff our cheeks a bit, as we handled most of them rather neatly. Whilst not the true final choice for the concept, this is our current visualization, with basic details, color scheme and overall silhouette intact. We are still working on the turrets and weaponry, we are aiming at making them feel modular and adaptable, and we hope it will turn out alright. Our workflow is specific in that both our concept artists and 3D artists are working hand in hand and creating a model at the same time. One makes a part-by-part concept is based itself on the concept you are seeing, one on the finished, ready for integration model. Now it's just a matter of time. Our concept artist Karanak is known for incredibly detailed and clean concepts, but those take time. Finding the right way to combine our workflow, well, I certainly hope we'll manage that. Again, I'm Alexander Lord Kipanidze, leader of the Team Troika, and I hope you enjoyed this bit of info. See you, Star Citizens!
SketchUp isn't really a modeling tool per se. That was one of the main problems Karanak encounters all the time. His concepts are done in 3D, right? The problem is, this model isn't exactly adaptable to the usual workflow right out of the box, so it has to be just redone, retopologized, done over and over and over in your basic 3D editor. For example, here's a cockpit session as he's done it in the SketchUp, then just converted to the usual 3D format.
Okay.
And here I am messing around with it. Then it goes over into CryEngine and stuff like that. The problem with this workflow, and I might have been using that word a bit too often these days, is that just look at it. Karanak likes to detail his ships, likes to detail them a bit too much, I might say, but then again, it all comes down to the task he is facing. You see, he didn't want to hold back for Star Citizen or something like that.
There's a lot of detail.
Yeah.
The little panels. From looking at it, I guess the things that are missing, I'm looking from the 3D concept model, the turrets on the side, right? The two turrets that are going to go on
Yep, and a little bit detail over
and the
here.
detail at the top. So on those side turrets, you know that simple shape you've got between the two antennas?
Yeah.
Is that just going to be replaced by the turret, or does the turret get added onto that?
Partially, yes. See, it will be cut somewhere around here.
Right,
like
okay.
this little form of wave space for the turret.
I mean, I think the idea, right, is that turret can rotate 360 degrees,
Yep.
and And then
Yep.
the gun can pitch 90 degrees.
Yep, about that. As big of a firing arc as we can realistically give it.
Right. Okay. Cool. I definitely like the direction it's going in right now. I mean, I feel like I kind of want to see obviously the turrets and the rest of that Greeble stuff finished out. And then the other big question is sort of the inside of the gunship, in terms of figuring out the space, how you get into it. Like, so, you know, does the pilot, can he go back into the cargo hold or where the Marines will be, or walk back into the turrets?
Basically, it goes like this. Here is the primary entrance to the ship.
Okay.
Then there's the cargo hold or drop port, whatever. We have designed it to be modular, so it can be replaced with 2 or 3 modules if there will be necessity.
Okay.
As for the cockpit, as you see, it's pretty undetailed. We haven't done any interior work for now. But the way it's going to be done, right? There's going to be the pilot seat in the front.
Okay.
The gunnery officer, and then the commander.
Is able to concentrate fire of all turrets on the ground or on the top side of the ship we are going to board. There are just minimal blind zones. Pilot is able to cover Marines during attack or retreat. Gunners have their own cabins, there are sleeping pods for everyone, pilot, gunners, up to 6 Marines, and in civil variants there will be space for pilot cabin as well. Our ship is not that pretty, but it is solid and will serve you for the lifetime. Ship is able to concentrate fire of all turrets on the ground or on the top side of the ship we are going to board. There are just minimal blind zones. Pilot is able to cover Marines during attack or retreat. Gunners have their own cabins, there are sleeping pods for everyone, pilot, gunners, up to 6 Marines, and in civil variants there will be space for pilot cabin as well. Greetings, dear citizens, judges. This is Team True with middle-of-the-road report of our development. We are still working on exteriors of the ship, but we are really close to finishing the first pass. And in parallel we worked on interiors. We identified how capsules are going to look like, and I'm going to demonstrate it soon enough. We also have a pretty good development on the doors. It's still work in progress, but we're going to show you some concept, and we would really appreciate your feedback on the style and on overall idea. Also, we finalize the turrets and how they're going to work in atmospheric flight, how they're going to work in space, and how exactly exterior is going to look like. Obviously, and I think this was a sort of confusion earlier, we do not have any texturing yet. We use some placeholder texturing in place just to show how ship looks like, but this is going to start soon enough. And we are still working on rear side turrets and some minor details about engines and rocket launcher. Obviously, we still have a lot of work to do in front of us, and it's a really tight time frame. Alex is doing as much as he can, and let's hope that we're going to finish everything in time. And please give us more information about what you like, what you don't like, what you see to be changed, what is absolute priority for you. And thanks again for all the support and feedback on forums and in comments to our YouTube channel. Here are sleeping pods for the Marines and the crew. Marine pods are placed vertically, as their primary usage will be to eject Marines as in emergency or for special missions, and sleep is just a secondary possibility. For the crew pods, the primary use is normal sleep. We make it possible to use them as sofas, and definitely they are good to save the life of the crew member in case of emergency. Let me show you the small sketch by Dmitry that illustrates marine crew purpose. Here is how thrusters will work for takeoff and how turrets will be positioned for atmospheric flight. Our gunship has same or smaller dimensions than the Hornet, so we are able to fit in Idris frigate perfectly.